The fluorescent lights of the county jail hummed a flat, indifferent note. Lena Deoliveira stared into the camera lens, and a smile broke across her face. It wasn't a smirk of defiance or a grimace of madness. It was a wide, genuine, almost relieved smile, the kind that reaches the eyes and crinkles the corners. The flash popped, capturing the image that would within hours be shared thousands of times, the smiling mugshot of the Hatchet girl. This is Lena Deoliveira Crime Story. Welcome to our YouTube channel. Please subscribe now. Unreal Truthful Crime. 36 hours earlier, that smile was a distant memory, buried under the heavy, cold weight of North Dakota winter and a different, more suffocating pressure. Lena was in the garage, her breath misting in the frigid air. The space was a monument to Mark's hobbies: neat racks of tools, a vintage Mustang on blocks, the sharp, clean smell of motor oil. For Lena, it had become a cage. It started with words, little comments about her job as a receptionist at the dental clinic. Cute, he'd called it. Then it was her friends. They're a bad influence, Lee. They don't want what's best for us. The circle tightened. Her family lived in Florida, a world away from Fargo. The arguments always followed the same path. A spark of her defiance, a torrent of his reasoning, and finally, the crushing silence of his disapproval. A silence heavier than any shout. He'd retreat to the garage, to his sanctuary, and she'd be left in the house, staring at the walls, trying to remember the person she was before she became Mark's girlfriend. That night, the argument had been about a text message. An old college friend, a woman, had sent a silly meme. Mark saw the notification on her phone. The interrogation was quiet, precise. Why was she texting her? Was there something she wasn't telling him? He took her phone, placed it on the highest shelf in the kitchen, and said, "You need a break from distractions. We need to focus on us." He'd gone to the garage to cool off, leaving her alone with the roaring silence. She stood in the kitchen for a long time, looking at her phone, a tiny, unreachable rectangle of her past life. Then her eyes drifted to the tool rack by the back door. Among the hammers and wrenches was the hatchet Mark used to split kindling for the fireplace they never used. It was small, with a sharp, polished head and a worn wooden handle. She didn't decide to do it. It was more like a circuit completed in her brain, a final, logical step in a process that had begun months ago. The weight of the hatchet in her hand felt solid, real. It was the first thing that had felt real in a long time. She pushed the garage door open. Mark was asleep in a worn recliner, a blanket pulled up to his chest, the television flickering with a late-night talk show. He looked peaceful. In that moment, she hated him for his peace. The quiet, controlling cruelty of his waking hours was gone, replaced by the innocent slackness of sleep. She raised the hatchet. The first blow was clumsy, a glancing strike off his shoulder. He woke with a grunt of shock and pain, his eyes wide with incomprehension. The second blow was more accurate. There was a sound she would never forget, a wet, chopping thud. He screamed then, a raw, animal sound, and tried to scramble out of the chair, his arms flailing to protect himself. Lena didn't feel rage. She felt a cold, surgical detachment. She was solving a problem. She was cutting herself free. With each swing, she was chopping through the arguments, the isolation, the constant, grinding erosion of her spirit. The neighbor, taking out his trash, heard the screams and the terrible, rhythmic thudding. He called 911. When the police arrived, they found Mark curled on the concrete floor, bleeding profusely from wounds to his arm and back, but alive. And they found Lena standing calmly by the workbench, the bloody hatchet on the floor beside her. She offered her wrists for the handcuffs without a word. In the back of the squad car, as Fargo slid by in a blur of snow and streetlights, a strange thing happened. The tightness in her chest, the knot of anxiety that had been her constant companion for a year, began to loosen. For the first time, the outcome was certain. There were no more mind games, no more walking on eggshells, no more waiting for the other shoe to drop. She was arrested. It was over. The booking process was a blur of procedures and mumbled answers until she was led to the camera. The officer behind the lens, a weary-looking man with a thick mustache, said, "Okay, look here." And she did. She looked into the lens and saw a reflection of herself, stripped of makeup, her hair a mess, wearing a standard-issue jumpsuit. And she saw a free woman. The smile that erupted was involuntary, a pure, unadulterated release. It was the smile of someone who had finally, after a long and terrifying struggle, reached the shore. Online, the world saw a monster. They saw a pretty young woman who had viciously attacked a sleeping man and had the audacity to smile about it. The comment sections filled with words like psycho and sociopath. News anchors discussed the bizarre case with grave concern. But in a small interview room, a female detective who had seen too much looked at Lena not as a viral sensation, but as a case file. She saw the records of missed calls from Lena's mother, the messages from friends that had slowly stopped. She saw the pattern, subtle but unmistakable, of coercive control. "He never hit me," Lena said softly, her smile gone now, replaced by a quiet exhaustion. "He just put me in a box." And every day the box got smaller. The detective nodded slowly. The smiling mugshot was still open on her tablet. She understood now. It wasn't a smile of triumph over violence. It was the desperate, twisted smile of liberation, the first breath of air after being held underwater for far too long. It was the story, not of a hatchet, but of the box. And in that sterile room, under the relentless fluorescent light, the real story finally began to be told. Thank you for watching this complete video. Please like and subscribe our YouTube channel, Unreal Truthful Crime. Stay safe.